I was thinking of some of the categories of gifts. I mean, sometimes there are expensive, the kind that actually, most people couldn't afford. And Lisa is hoping that there's a diamond ring or something under the tree this year. I can assure her with absolute confidence that's not going to happen. Not because I wouldn't give her a diamond ring, but just, it's a little bit out of my pocket. So that's not going to happen. But sometimes there are gifts that are more novelty gifts. They're the kind of things, they might not cost very much, but they put a smile on our faces. They're just a little bit quirky, a little bit funny. And I remember there was one person used to come to this church, and he brought along a quirky novelty gift for another person in the church who liked fishing. And he gave him this mounted fish. Okay. And they opened up this, this kind of, a wooden mount, and there's the catch of the day, nicely mounted on the thing to go on the wall. And the thing is, of course, that you just press a little button. You've probably seen these things. It starts wagging its tail and head and singing "Be Happy." So novelty gifts, you can get those sort. Sometimes we get useful gifts. And useful gifts, they're the kind of thing, they may cost a lot, they may cost a little, but actually it's just something that you just always are going to use it. Always going to be handy to have the little useful gift around. And some of us, no doubt, can think of little useful things that we've had. Sometimes we get a gift that's more of, the consumable gift. It's the box of chocolates or whatever it might be, and they're just delicious for that moment, and then they're gone. Some gifts are meant to be just sort of like a one-off thing. Perhaps it's a gift of, maybe a visit to somewhere, the theatre or something like that, and you've got the tickets to get you in. Lots of different gifts. And I was trying to think back over all the years now of getting Christmas presents, and lots of them over the years. Do you know, there aren't too many that I can actually remember. And I know I did this a couple of years ago, and I asked you, who can remember what they got for Christmas the previous year? And about 2 hands went up, I think. And it's true, isn't it? We forget so quickly the gifts that we get. It's not that we don't appreciate them. It's just somehow or other they kind of just blend in with everything else. So it's quite difficult to remember gifts. But sometimes there's a gift that really stands out for us. Maybe you can think of something, a gift that you've had that really stands out, and you're always going to remember it. Well, I've got a gift. I've got it with me today, actually. And I was given this gift, I think it was Christmas 1980 that I was given this gift. So 100 years ago or thereabouts. I think it's about 100 years ago. But maybe not quite that long. But this gift, all those years ago, and I still can remember receiving that gift. And I still have that gift. And that gift, I know exactly where it is. I don't have to search high and low for it. I know exactly where it is. And I went this morning and I picked it straight up because I've always known where that gift is. And it was a gift from my grandparents, actually. And here it is. That's the gift they gave me. And it's a Bible. And at the time it didn't have this leather type cover on it. I put that on later. But it came actually, it just had like a bright yellow dust jacket on it. And it's a Good News Bible. And it wasn't the first Bible that I'd ever had, because I had another Bible before that. But it was the first Bible that I'd received in a modern, contemporary English language. And around about that time and just before, in the mid-70s, I suppose, there were lots of translations, I say lots, or a handful of translations starting to come out in modern English, whereas previously to that, most people had used either the old King James Version from 1609 with all its antiquated, archaic language, or perhaps the RSV, which was a little better but not much. And so to get these modern translations was quite something. Now, previous to that, I got a little Bible that I don't know who gave to me. It was a children's Bible, but it was all in this archaic language of the King James Version. So this one was very different. And I remember sitting down and opening it and reading it and thinking, wow, what a difference. And I knew a little bit about these Bibles because our church was starting to use it. It's actually the Good News translation. And we were using that in our church at the time. And later on in the day, my grandparents, as very often happened, they came to our house. And I went to them and I thanked them for my present that they'd given to me. And I remember to this day what my granddad said to me. And he said to me, he said, when you eat your food, he said, and when you remain active, he said, you grow big and strong on the outside. He said, if you use this every day, you will grow big and strong on the inside. Now, I'm not sure I really understood what he meant then. I said, of course, nodded and thanked him and said, yes, I knew what he meant. But, I was about 9 years of age, I think. And I didn't really sort of understand what he meant by that I would grow big and strong on the inside. But over the years, I kept reading it, and not just this Bible, but many others as well. They're all basically the same, but today I use the New International Version mainly, and I just prefer it. But actually, for children, this one was absolutely ideal. In fact, very often this one still gets used today because Lisa borrows it for when she's preparing the children's work for a Sunday morning, so it still gets used. But actually, what I discovered was my granddad was right, that the more I read it, something strange was happening on the inside. Because although I couldn't see it, and I didn't really understand what he meant by I get big and strong on the inside, but I began to notice that there was something developing inside of me, some thoughts and some ideas, and also I think there was something about a determination. That determination was that I knew what direction I wanted my life to go in. And I'm not just talking about a career choice or something like that. I'm talking about the fact that I knew that I wanted to follow the person who was behind the book. I began to understand that this isn't just any ordinary book, that it was a book that actually was somehow a bit of a mystery, really, that although it was written by human beings, that it was actually given by God. That he inspired them to write it, and I began to believe that with all my heart, even from a very young age. And the more I read it, the more I began to understand, actually the truth is now, I realise the more I think I understand, the more I realise there is to know. It just seems to keep opening this vast, vast chasm for me of things to explore. But, it did make an absolute difference to my life. It completely transformed the way that I thought, the way that I acted, my attitude towards life, towards other people, and more importantly, my attitude towards God himself. And even though I've been brought up in a home where we went to church and we were, very involved in the church. My parents were both Christians. They encouraged us in this, and other family members too. But actually, that's not enough, and I needed to know that for myself. And that's what I began to find as I read this more and more. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I understood it all, even though it was in a simple language. I'm not going to pretend that I actually, didn't have some troubles with some of the ideas that were in there, because, I mean, some of it was still really hard going. And I made the classic mistake of when I got this Bible, that I decided I was going to read it from front to back. And Genesis was great, Exodus was okay, Leviticus, well, I suddenly found myself in treacle. And then somebody said to me, don't do that, go to the New Testament and start in the New Testament and read. So I went to the New Testament and I began to read Matthew and Mark and Luke and John and the book of Acts, and that was much easier. Then I read some of Paul's letters, and they seemed a little bit hard going again. Some of the concepts that he talks about, but I kept reading bits of it again and again and again. And then this growth that my granddad had told me about started to happen. Now, why am I telling you that? Because I think that actually I wasn't expecting that gift. And yet, in a sense, probably as I think through all the gifts that I can remember, and I said there aren't too many, that probably the most important gift that I've been ever given at Christmas time was probably this Bible. Because I think it was that changed me. Not so much receiving the gift, but actually using that gift. Now, Bibles are not that expensive in this country. I'd have no idea. I mean, it was a fairly common, standard sort of Bible. Wouldn't have cost very much, but that didn't matter. It wasn't the price that mattered. It was valuable in another way. And the thing is that what it really did for me is that it introduced me to a person that I'd heard so much about. I've been hearing about Jesus all my life. I've been going to the church Sunday school since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. And so, I knew about this Jesus, and I think, I did know him. I mean, there was definitely, I had that kind of relationship with him. Even as a very small child, I used to pray and believe that I was actually communicating with God. But somehow or other, I got to know him so much better through reading this. And I thought to myself, just a day or two back, as I was thinking about what I was going to say this morning, and I thought that this in a way symbolises, I think, what Christmas is really all about. That it was God giving himself to us. And that's what I feel I received in getting this. This, in a sense, was God being given to me and made such a huge difference to my life. The impact was amazing. And that gift that came all those years ago, 2,000 years ago in Jesus Christ, still makes an impact to this very day if we're prepared to accept and to use the gift that God has given. Of all the gifts that have ever been given at Christmas time, Jesus has to be the most valuable. He has to be the most useful. He's certainly not a novelty gift, though some people might treat him a bit like that. He's certainly not a joke gift. It's a very serious gift. Certainly not a gift that you just kind of put on show somewhere. No, he's a gift to be used. And the gift is not so much the case of a baby, but the gift is that this baby grew into a man who lived a perfect life and then completed that life by dying when he should never have died. And that's the whole of the Christian message. And we can sum it up in this, that this was God showing his love to us at Christmas. I believe with all my heart that my grandparents chose to give me this book because they loved me. And they wanted to show that. And this book had influenced and impacted them over many, many years. And they wanted the same for their grandchildren. I guess probably at some point, all of us grandchildren, there were a lot of us, 20-something grandchildren, we probably all got one at some point. But that's because our grandparents said, this is important, and you need to follow this. God gave to us Jesus because he says, this is important, and you need to follow him. I'm going to give you the best, the greatest, the most magnificent gift that anyone could possibly ever receive. At the time when I received it, I don't think I realised just how valuable it would be. It's only here we are now, 30-odd years later, that I can look back and realise that actually this Bible, or more specifically, the Jesus behind this Bible, was the greatest gift that anyone can possibly have at Christmas. And I hope that you too will know that special gift in your own life as well.